Who's getting excited to move on? But I think I have a couple important things I want to say here this morning first. So thank you for reminding us that after the sermon comes the celebration of the gift that is important. You know, I woke up this morning and I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. First of all, because my daughter has been feeling well the last couple of days, and she kept me awake and actually awake last night. So I got up at 4 o'clock this morning and rolled out of bed and decided I needed to do some serious thinking. I changed what I was going to wear this morning, and I put on my more formal clergy collar and stole, and I went outside and I wrote on a sign, Black Lives Matter, and I stood on the corner of 4th and 5th for about a half hour this morning as I reflected on the events of the past couple of days, especially in Charlottesville, North Carolina. I think that is weighing heavily on my heart as I reflected on the scripture and tried to make sense of what it is that we are called to do, to offer a prophetic voice for you this morning and a pastoral sense of how we move forward as people who experience and bear witness to hatred and violence in this world. How fitting it is to have a scripture like the one we read today that we don't often read about because it is a difficult one for us to address. It's the story of King David's daughter, Tamar, and how her half-brother, Amnon, becomes lustful after her and rapes her. And then discards her. And perhaps one of the greatest injustices that is lifted up in the exegesis, the scholarly work done on this passage, is that King David doesn't do anything about it. Because he loves both his daughter and his son, he feels that he cannot make any action that would make anyone happy, and so chooses to do nothing about it whatsoever. One of the hinges here in this story is that the scripture says that Amnon was so in love with his sister, but he knew that it was impossible to do anything about that. And it's because Amnon's sister was a virgin, and so she lived in a special apartment within the temple. And so she wasn't out in public where you could go meet her and greet her. And one of the craftiness parts of the story is that he teams up with another person in the fortress that they live in and becomes sick, and uses that as an excuse to have King David send his daughter Tamar to go to his bedside and attend to him. It's the only way he can think of to proceed with his plan, his sense of evil that he's going to do to Tamar. Tamar is an interesting figure because she's stuck. She's trapped in what we would describe today as a system of evil that keeps her holed up in an apartment away from the crowds, away from everyone else, because of who she is and what she stands for. She's separated from people, and they think that this is a way to protect her. She, as a woman, is trapped in that sexism of the day and age. Now, it's hard for me as a modern preacher to look back on what was happening thousands of years ago and say, well, that was sexism, that's what was going on. We have the benefit of thousands of years of history and over 100 years of advancement for women in our culture and society that empowers me to stand up and say that we don't treat our women that way anymore. And so I wish in my heart I could say that things could have been different for Tamar, but the fact was that they couldn't. This was her situation, and this was her story. She was a part of a system of evil that reinforced the way of being in the world. She was forced to go to her brother by her father. And then when evil things happened to her, and she was abused and assaulted, she turned to Amnon and said, "Please do not send me out, for it would be a double curse to me." Because in those days and age, if you were raped by a male, then you had to be married by your rapist, married to your rapist. Because anyone who had had sex outside of marriage was outcast from the city and outcast from the culture. And so Amnon sending Tamar out after the assault is more brokenness for her. And brokenness because it's a system that neither of them can seem to escape. Amnon may be the one who's committing the sin, but it is still a part of the system of evil that exists for them. And King David perpetuates that evil by doing nothing about it. Later on in the story, when we read past this particular passage, we discover that 2 years, Absalom, King David's other son, is so angry at Amnon for doing what he did to Tamar that he waits in patience and then finds the right opportunity to go and murder Amnon, to give back, to pay back, to avenge what was done to Tamar. I wonder about this story in light of what has happened yesterday in Charlottesville. And I was reading an article by the Reverend Dr. Susan Thistlethwaite, who will be coming to our church in April as part of our first annual homegrown lectureship. And she's a professor at Chicago Theological Seminary and its past president. And she writes that many who are condemning what has happened in Charlottesville are calling the racism that fuels it sinful and the rally evil. And that's true. But the kind of wickedness that defines the demonic that we witnessed yesterday is more than sin and evil. It is, in fact, the malignancy of sin and evil combining and reinforcing each other. As Mary Potter Ingle put it so well in her book, Lift Every Voice, Constructing Christian Theologies from the Underside, Mary writes, "Evil and sin together may be called wickedness." Evil and sin together are called wickedness. The complex condition of a lack of right revelation in the world in which we live naturally, socially, and individually. So evil here are the systems created by centuries of oppression, racist oppression, homophobic oppression, sexist oppression. And sin is the free and discrete acts that create and reinforce these structures of oppression, which happens for us today in our age, in housing and in the judicial system, the prison industrial complex, the economy, and in politics, and in so much more. They mutually reinforce, and that is what we call wickedness. Structures, systems, white Christian complicity, and those are a given. Then we need to move outside of theology to get even more help to understand the many layers of the demonic acts in white supremacy. Sociologists have described what they call the wicked problem. These are problems that are driven by a vast number of interconnected forces that sustain and grow them. In our healthcare system, we might look at this as something we call palliative care, in which we address the many layers underlying a single health condition. And it's not enough to just treat one. You must treat all of them in combined cooperation. These interconnected forces sustain and grow racism and wicked problems. Wicked problems are characteristically difficult either to recognize or solve. Horst Riddle, one of the most famous and first to formalize a theory of wicked problems, cites 10 characteristics of these complicated social issues, some which stand out as particularly applicable to white supremacy. Wicked problems, quote, have no definitive formulation. as they have different patterns in different locations. White supremacy in Chicago, Illinois, for example, has important differences in terms of historical roots, as well as economic and political structures, than the white supremacy of, let's say, Virginia. White supremacy is a wicked problem because it bleeds. That means there are no boundaries to its causes or its effects. Instead, white supremacy permeates education, law enforcement, economics, politics, religion. Our churches are the most segregated institutions in America. And broadly speaking, our culture has these wicked problems. Sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, and classism all need our constant re-examination, critique, and corrective action, because white supremacy is a constant force of depravity and deformation. So when I say that white supremacy is demonic, this is Susan Thistlebrand, she says, when I say white supremacy is demonic, I mean it is a kind of wickedness. It is a kind of wicked problem that hides and lies and denies and warps and corrupts. It is the unclean spirit that percolates through all of this and cannot easily be confronted. See it yourself as you track in the mud of it. See as you track it around, perhaps unknowingly. The time of thinking oneself innocent just because you don't give a Nazi salute in Charlottesville is over. The corruption bleeds. Remember that. The time to acknowledge and confront the demonic forces of white supremacy is now. Our Minister for Social Justice, for Peace and Justice on the national setting of the United Church of Christ, Tracy Blackman, was at the event in Charlottesville. And she was giving an interview on live television when she had to be suddenly whisked away because of the violent protests that were erupting around her. As a black woman, she knew firsthand what it meant to stand in the midst of that danger. What a challenge it was to stand in that and say, white supremacy does not have the final word in our culture, in our history, in our society. See, I see a strong link here between what we witness and hear about in the news and what we have read and heard about the story of Tamar. Tamar is a victim of the systems of oppression that existed in her time and, which we may argue, still exist in this day and age. A woman's virginity, her purity, how her life is transformed after an assault, and how those whom she went to help support her, while they may believe her, feel powerless to do anything about it, and so choose to do nothing. I believe that it is our role as people who live in positions of power by the nature of who we are to stand up and rise together and say, on behalf of all people, that hate does not live here, that love lives here, that we can do better for one another by using our privileges to advocate for greater justice and mercy in this world. You see, when I went online last night, I posted that as a white person, I am responsible for white supremacy. I cannot leave it to my black brothers and sisters, my people of color who I march in solidarity with, to do this work alone because of the power dynamic. As a white male, I hold power in this culture that they do not. And if I am silent, then they are doing all the heavy lifting. It is my prerogative, it is my call, it is my prophetic voice to stand up and say that we all need to say, not in our town, not in our communities, not in our homes, not in our hearts. Hate cannot thrive because the lightness overcomes it. The light overcomes the darkness. And the darkness cannot overcome the light which God has given to us in this world. See, I used to be a person who believed that I wasn't racist. Because I didn't hate black people. I didn't hate people of color. But I spent 2 years in seminary on learning that. I was challenged to see beyond what I thought I knew. See, I felt conflicted, and I felt anger because people were trying to tell me I needed to do something about the violence and the oppression that was going on around me. Because I believed that I had no hand in it. I was not the one oppressing people. I was not hurting anyone. But on the other hand, as was pointed out to me, I was also not doing anything about it. My white silence was empowering the white supremacy, the system of white privilege that I live in. And so it's not enough for me to say I'm not racist. In fact, it's important for me to admit that I am racist. That when I walk down the street and I see a person of color, I've been trained to have fear, empower and overcome me, and control the ways that I react to the situation. I have to spend a hard amount of time to unlearn that. And that takes courage. You see, there's one time where I fully understood what it meant. 2 years of being in seminary and being in a very diverse culture in the south side of Chicago tried to teach me about what racism is. But one day changed all of that. I was working for an institution as an employee, and we were greeting a school group as they were coming in to visit the institution. And I watched this bus unload of children and walk past me, and wonderful, diverse group of people from all different cultures and races. And then I watched another bus after that unload with a group from the care facility, a group home of adults with disabilities. Every single one of them was black. People with Down syndrome and other cognitive disabilities. And as I greeted them and welcomed them, I suddenly realized that I was in a little bit of shock, because it had never occurred to me that black people could have disabilities like what I was seeing. My internal racism had erased even the possibility of me to see that people who I work and live with on a daily rate have the same issues and problems and lives, that they experience the same diversity that I experienced in my life. And I was trying to explain this to one of my coworkers. I was like, I see now what I was being held to. This system, the structure of racism, which we call evil in the world, didn't show me that people who are different from me could also experience a struggle in their life. And so it wasn't even on my radar to acknowledge that a black person could have a disability. It was startling to me. And it suddenly helped me to start unwrapping the ways in which I had this internal racism. What that moment did to me was not just allow me to say, I have black friends, but allowed me to take a whole people into my heart and see that their struggles are my struggles, that their victories are my victories, that their pain is my pain. And because I could see that one similarity that I never saw before, it opened my eyes to the power of anti-racism work. And so no longer do I stand around and say that I'm not a racist, because that's not true. See, being a racist is participating in the system of evil. That ways in which we act and behave and gain from that white privilege, that's the sin of the world that helps perpetuate the structures of evil. The ways that I behave as a white male that silences people of color and women and minorities, LGBTQ people, The ways that I'm not careful with my words about how to describe these subgroups, these marginalized individuals. The ways that I'm constantly trying to learn and call myself accountable to what I see on the street when my wife or my daughter gets catcalled. The ways that I try to understand what my role is in standing up to the ways of pain and hurt in this world, that is mine to bear as a white male. I'm not the one oppressing people. I'm not the one catcalling. But by God Almighty, I'm the one who's going to stand up and say, enough. No more. The prophet Micah stands up and says, with what shall we come before the Lord? What is it, O God, do you require? Is it sacrifice that I lay myself on the altar of whiteness and say, as a white male, I must sacrifice myself so that I can do justice to this world? No. What God requires of us is to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. It's not sacrifice, it's humility. It's the ability for me as a person in power to not stop speaking like what King David did when he had the power to change what was happening in his own home, in his own kingdom. No, I have the power to be humble and keep my voice and let it amplify what others are saying. It is my role to step aside and let those who are unable to step into positions of power because of who they are, the color of their skin, or their gender identity, or whatever it may be. It is my role that God has called me into to be an advocate for justice and peace and mercy in this world. And those are things that make me hurt. They cost me. And so that's what I give up when I stand up and I say, I believe in anti-racism. I'm a voice that says Black Lives Matter. I'm a person that says that women's lives matter, and gay lives matter, queer lives matter, because I have a lot to lose when I do that. But it is far less of a loss than what those who live in those minority communities every day in their own skin are at risk of losing just by being who they are. My mother wrote me a note this morning, and she said, I went down to the beach with a friend tonight to see the meteors, and it was cloudy and I saw only one. But the night was warm and balmy. The waves' sound was lovely, and the stars did peek through the patches of cloud and darkness. So it was not a waste. Have a good night, all. There is still good out here in this weary world. That is the hope that we have today. That is the hope that our God gives us. That is the hope of Jesus Christ, who does not do what David does, who does not do what Amnon does or Absalom does, and does not even do what Tamar does. He finds a third way in which is not violent or passive. He stands in the face of oppression and resists the powers of evil, the systems that oppress people. He calls us to accountability and says, do not remove the splinter in your neighbor's eye until you remove the log in your own. My friends, this is the good news, that we are not powerless in the midst of the KKK, who are present here in Grand Junction and in our communities and in the United States. We are not powerless. We have the power to use our voices and our hearts and our God-given talents as the people who God made us to be, to stand up and say, no, love lives here. Love has the final word. And we follow Christ, even up to the cross and beyond. For we are a people of hope and resurrection. And when the clouds are overcoming the night sky and block our view of the stars that give us hope that we wish upon, the The stars still peek through. Martin Luther King Jr. so famously said that the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. And it is my hope that by speaking today and saying we all need to look at our own white privilege, call ourselves to accountability, realize that we have power to change this world for greater good, and that we can no longer afford to remain silent on these issues. We are speaking truth to power. We are speaking the words of the wise prophet Micah, who calls us every day to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. May we do so today and evermore. Amen.